I've been shooting weddings now for over 10 years, and recently I was thinking, well, if you were shooting your very first wedding, what are the tips that I would give to you, the ones that would actually matter? My name is Pi. I've been fortunate to create multiple successful companies in the photography space. I'm a photographer, but even more so, I would say I'm an educator and frameworks person. My specialty, making complex subjects easy for you to master, right here on Adorama TV. So here it is, 10 critical tips for those of you shooting your very first wedding. Oh, and I'm going to save the best one for last, so you have to actually watch to the end. Okay, friends, I don't like to dilly-dally. I'm going to get straight into this. I want to avoid obvious tips like make sure you're using professional gear, be sure to communicate and arrive early, all that kind of stuff. I want to focus on what's going to actually matter to you, your career development, as well as your early clients. So let's get into this. Tip number 1, charge something. I don't care if it's $500 or $1,000, just charge your clients something. People don't appreciate things that they don't pay for. And you're new to weddings, I get it. So you can't really charge a premium, but you should still charge something to make that time valuable. Because when you don't put some value or just any value onto your time, your clients are going to take advantage of you left and right. Tip 2, set the right expectations by not pretending that you're experienced. I don't care how good your work is, your clients should know that you're new to this. And look, maybe you're only charging them $500 or $1,000 like we said. That's totally fine. Maybe your product and service is actually worth $2,000 or $3,000 coming right out of the gate, right? But that's the thing. Without the experience, it's hard to actually justify that higher price point. Let your first clients benefit by taking that risk. They're risking hiring someone new to this, but they benefit in getting a product that hopefully is going to be worth $2,000 or $3,000 for a fraction of the price. The key here is that their expectations are properly set. They know that they're getting someone new, but it's what they can afford, and they're willing to take the risk on that. And guess what? As long as you're delivering a product that's more valuable than what your clients are paying, well, your clients are going to rave about your service. This is going to be your stepping stone to higher paying clients. As you gain experience and your product and service grows, raise your rates, but always keep those rates below the value of the service and product you're actually providing. Number 3, you need to know what your client actually values. So imagine this, you're at a wedding and there are potentially hundreds of things happening at once. If you're early in your career, it's probably just you. Maybe you have a second shooter. Hopefully, we'll talk about that later. But you can only point your lens in one, maybe 2 directions at a time. So you need to make sure that what you're capturing is actually what your client values. Okay, so within our premium education, we've created this psychological visualization exercise for your clients so that you can consistently understand exactly what your clients value. We call it the wave, but the thing is that this exercise, or at least teaching it, takes a couple hours, right? So it's beyond the scope of the time that we have here. So here's what I want you to do right now. Sit down with your clients to discuss their wedding. And I prefer doing this in person. Usually it happens at the time of sale. During that time, stop asking them about their wedding plans or about their timeline, about these little details. Save all the details for later. Instead, I want you to ask them open-ended questions that get them to tell stories about things that they actually value. For example, what are you looking forward to most on your wedding day? When you ask those questions, sit and pay close attention to how they describe and answer those questions. This will tell you what they actually value. Okay, number 4, prioritize your client's values above everything else. Look, I know that you want to get creative. You want to get the shots that you want to have for your portfolio. But if those shots are not what your client actually values, then they should take a back seat until you've covered the must-haves, the things that they actually want. On top of that, I want to give you another scenario here. Oftentimes, there's maybe a crazy guest on the dance floor, right? Someone that's just going wild. It's amazing. It's photography worthy. So a photographer will take 50 shots of that one person because it's interesting, right? Then when they deliver the images to the client asks something like, hey, but did you get a shot of grandma? She was actually right next to the dance floor. I know you got those 50 shots of that one guest in that party, but I didn't see any of grandma. I'm sure you have them. I just didn't see them in the gallery. You have them somewhere, right? Then you look into the catalog and realize you don't have grandma's portrait. I've seen this happen way too many times. It's just far too easy for a photographer to focus on what's visually interesting because it's captivating. It's right there in front of you instead of what the client actually values. So prioritize what they value above everything else. Again, this ties back to why the wave as a visualization exercise is so critically important. It's so important that you understand their values. Number 5, I want you to shoot raw. And I don't care what camera you're using, just make sure that that camera has in-camera backup and that you've turned the feature on and are using it. So first, shooting RAW is going to offer you far more flexibility in post-production. And what this means is that if you mess up an important shot, which believe me, is going to happen at some point, then at least you'll have a good chance of being able to recover it in post. Second, in-camera backup is a must-have. This is where you take a shot and the camera is going to record the same image to both your primary and your secondary card. If you're shooting a once-in-a-lifetime event, you need in-camera backup to save you from all the possible what-ifs that could potentially happen. I'm not going to get into those what-ifs. Just save yourself the heartache right from the start. Doesn't matter what camera you're using. Just make sure it has dual card slots and that you can do in-camera backup. On this note, just a quick bonus tip. When we leave a wedding, we actually send the primary cards with the lead shooter and the secondary backup cards with the second shooter. That way, 2 copies of those images exist at all times, just in case, heaven forbid, that someone gets into an accident, gear is stolen, or anything else. We don't actually clear those cards, by the way, until all the images are on the server, as well as on the cloud and verified. Okay, number 6, CYA, or cover your assets. This means that if you don't know whether you should shoot it or not, shoot it anyway. Maybe it's food or hors d'oeuvres. Maybe it's some random wedding detail. You don't know whether your client wants it. Just shoot it anyway. It costs you virtually nothing to capture extra images, but it's going to cost you a whole hell of a lot if you end up missing photos. Tip 7, I want you to take control and to be the director. See, a lot of photographers are uncertain and timid, especially early in their career. They're afraid at weddings to approach people and to ask them what they need or if they want a photograph. They even have a hard time standing in front of a group and directing that group to pose. So understand this. Look, as creatives, most of us are going to be naturally introverted. But when you have that camera in your hand, that literally becomes your passport. You are being paid to ask for photos, to direct, to pose people. In a kind way, of course. You don't want to be obtrusive. But in your head, I want you to treat your camera like your passport. It's what gives you permission to be that extroverted version of yourself. And when you put it down at the end of the night, you can relax and go back to being you. But so long as you're holding it, that's who you are. Tip 8, think wide, medium, and tight. See, if it's your first wedding or even early in your career, you're going to have a hard time storytelling and being creative when kind of on the spot and pressured. Everyone's going to struggle with this. With time, you're going to gain comfort and confidence in just being able to think creatively in a pinch. But for now, just think wide, medium, and tight. What this means is that in order to properly tell a story within an album, wall art, or even on a blog spread, right? We need a variety of images. And specifically, you need that wide image that kind of establishes the overall scene for this story. You need medium shots to show who's involved within the story. Then you need the close-up or the tight shots to be able to show details and the emotion within the key members of that story. In fact, if you look at the wide, medium, tight framework, you're actually going to see it all throughout television and film. Wide, medium, tight. Tip number 9, create a list for family portraits. Family portraits are one of the most important aspects of the wedding day. And within our education, we show photographers not only how to make it fun, but also how to create images that will make you bank, images that sell. But for now, let me just say this. Family portraits are also the number 1 area for client complaints. And it always comes down to, well, really 2 things. Either you didn't get a certain portrait or you didn't get a certain portrait combination that they were wanting. Maybe you did the entire bride side of the family, but they also wanted a shot with just the girls and then a shot with just the boys, and you missed those shots. Now, we discourage using shot lists that detail every single shot for a wedding day because it can really detract from your creativity and being able to capture what's happening in front of you. But most certainly, you should at least have a shot list of the family portraits. You should ask your client what portraits do they want to have along with the combinations. Let the clients know that it takes around 2 to 3 minutes at least per combination so they don't go crazy with this list. Then make sure when you see the timeline that the timeline permits whatever is needed to capture those portraits. If not, you're going to say something. Oh yeah, and make sure, by the way, you're not shooting group portraits at like f1.2. Come on, child, don't do that. Look, missing family portraits are one of the easiest potential complaints that you can nip right at the bud with just a little bit of planning. This brings me to tip number 10. This is the big one. This is the one I think is the most valuable and probably the one that most of you are going to have a problem with. But if you want to fast track your career development as a wedding photographer, here's what I'm going to say. Hire a second shooter that's an experienced wedding photographer. Look, I know that you're probably only getting $500 to maybe $1,500 for these first early weddings in your career, right? Hiring an experienced second shooter is probably going to cost you at least $500. And that means that for some of you, this could be all of the revenue that you're generating, or at least 30 to 50% of it for others. So why would I tell you to do this? Well, because you're going to treat these early weddings like basically live educational events. Attending a live workshop, that can easily cost you $1,500, $2,000, or even more. But you can hire an experienced wedding photographer as a second shooter, usually for around $500 for maybe an 8-hour day, right? That person will have shot weddings as a lead, as a second, and even more. That person will also instantly level up the quality of your work, which your clients are going to love. But on top of that, you get to ask them and to watch them do what they do. If you've got a question on the dance floor and how to light it, ask them. If you want to understand how they got a particular shot, ask them. In addition, you get to have all the images that they're creating into your catalog, which you can then study after the shoot. So if you don't need the money right now, this step can actually amplify the trajectory of your career by 5 to 10 times in and of itself. A year from now, you'd be so much further ahead because you've had that time to learn from more experienced photographers. Okay, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to check out SLR Lounge Premium. This is everything that you need to go from picking up the camera, learning how to light, how to shoot, directing, posing, and even running a 6 or 7-figure wedding photography business. Meantime, tell me what you thought of the video in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. You know how YouTube works. Do this stuff because, well, this is YouTube, but also because you love me and you want to see me keep my job so I can see you guys back here same time, same place on Adorama TV next week. Peace.